Thrive Nation, on today's show, we're interviewing Jim McKelvey, the co-founder of Square, who shares with us how he started Square and why you don't have to be a genius to become the founder of a billion-dollar company or a successful entrepreneur. On today's show, Jim McKelvey shares with us how you can get really good at something real fast if you have to.
So I thought, oh, well, maybe if I make a lot of glass work, I can sell it. And then I immediately realized that my work was terrible. But it's amazing how fast you can learn something if you decide that that's your career. So I woke up the next morning and I was like, you better get serious and learn how to sell your stuff.
He shares with us how he came up with the idea to start Square.
And that, in fact, was one of the things behind Square, because I was trying to sell one of these silly glass bathroom faucets to a lady in Panama who only had an American Express card, which I don't take.
He shares with us his definition of the word entrepreneur and contrasts that to the description that the world has for what it means to be an entrepreneur.
So here's the way I use the word entrepreneur. If you are doing something that has never been done before, if you are solving a problem that is unsolved today, you're an entrepreneur, and I will support you and applaud you and pity you. But that is a different process than starting a business.
Jim was once the boss of the founder of Twitter, Jack Dorsey. And he and Jack Dorsey teamed up together to build Square together. And Jack Dorsey's background was that as a professional massage therapist, and his background was being that of a glass blower. And he explains why that was a perfect background to start Square.
Jack was no financial expert. He's running one of the biggest financial companies in the country right now. You know what his professional credential is? He's a certified massage therapist.
Sweet.
Doesn't even have a college degree. Okay, so you got a glass blower and a financial therapist building one of the most notable financial companies in the country right now.
Jim shares with us how to create that fire of desire that is required to build a successful business.
Like when I do something, I try to burn the boats. I try to put myself in a situation where me and my team have to survive or we perish. Now, perish in this case is the company dies, like no individuals die. But there have been, like that's great motivation. Like if you're committed to solving a problem,
I agree.
I'm totally committed. Then you don't have to have great tenacity. You just have to have a survival instinct.
He shares with us why you don't need a college degree to become successful as an entrepreneur.
You don't have to have a degree to be an entrepreneur, certainly, because by definition, the degree is going to prepare you to do stuff that humanity already knows how to do. So if you want to be a business person, you want to be an accountant, you want to run, want to be an attorney, you want to be, a software engineer that works at a company, go get qualified. And that qualification is typically a degree.
He shares with us how Square landed its first 10 customers.
Number 2 was a flower lady who sold flowers literally in the building. So we were in Jack's apartment building.
Learn all this and more on today's edition of the Thrive Time Show, where we interview the mind-blowing and glass-blowing co-founder of Square, Jim McKelvey.
Some shows don't need a celebrity narrator to introduce the show, but this show does. 2 men, 8 kids, co-created by 2 different women, 13 multi-million-dollar businesses. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Thrive Time Show.
Now, 3, 2, 1, here we go!
Started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, and we'll show you how to get here. Started from the bottom, now we here. We started from the bottom, now we here. Started from the bottom, now we here.
Yes, and yes, Thrive Nation. On today's show, we have a very special occasion. We have the mind-blowing and glass-blowing founder of Square, Jim McKelvey. How are you, sir?
Doing well. How are you?
I seriously am fired up here. I don't know if I'm more fired up about your glass-blowing career or more fired up about the Fed or Square. But let's start with where you grew up. What was your life like growing up?
Kid from St. Louis, Missouri. Grew up in a little apartment and then a little house. And Dad's a teacher. He was dean of the engineering school at Washington U. So I grew up around scientists and geeks and people who did a lot of math. A relatively boring childhood, but it's St. Louis is a great city to live in, especially if you have kids. And I know I'm putting an ad out for my city, but let me just do it. You can have a normal life here. and it is accessible to everybody, and I love it. So that's what we're doing. Living in St. Louis.
How many times have you gone up in the arch?
Oh, probably 7 or 8. You know, I mean, you gotta go up in the arch.
Have you met Ozzie Smith?
Yes, I've met Ozzie like 3 or 4 times. Ozzie Smith's kid went to my public high school.
No way.
Yes.
Oh, the Wizard of Oz. So
Yeah.
in your mind, who's a bigger deal, Mark McGuire or Ozzie Smith in terms of Cardinal? Ozzie?
Ozzie.
Standing ovation for Ozzie Smith.
It's the backflip.
Oh, the backflip.
I mean, Mark couldn't do a backflip.
Can you do a backflip?
I cannot do a backflip.
Okay, I still respect you. Okay, so now you live in St.
We
Louis.
haven't talked that long, have we?
Now you live in St. Louis, and tell me about the glass blowing. I mean, what was your first real job? Was it glass blowing? Was it something else? Well, tell me how you got started with a career.
I don't know what my first real job was. I don't know if I've even had it yet. I think I worked for IBM for a while, and that was technically a real job, although I was working out of the LA office and living in St. Louis, so there was no adult supervision. But glass blowing was one of these things I got into after I quit my first semi-real job. I worked for a startup that was just not going anywhere and run by a guy that I didn't really respect. And I quit without having another job lined up. I just walked in and quit. And I woke up the next morning. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do for money? And at the time, programming wasn't as popular as it is today. So my computer science degree didn't mean anything. But I kind of knew how to blow glass. So I thought, oh, well, maybe if I make a lot of glass work, I can sell it. And then I immediately realized that my work was terrible. But it's amazing how fast you can learn something if you decide that that's your career. So I woke up the next morning and I was like, you better get serious and learn how to sell your stuff. So I got really good at glass blowing really fast because it was the way I was paying the bills.
What kind of stuff did you sell that people liked?
I had no integrity. So I would make anything. I like pink and blue, lady, if you think it matches, I'll make it for you. I was doing commissions, I was doing chandeliers, I was doing a lot of bowls and vases. And then out of sort of sheer craziness, my studio put in a bid to host the World Glass Art Conference. And we got this big studio in St. Louis called Third Degree, and we won the bid to be the hosts for the world's glass artists. And this is a big deal. It was in Australia the year before. So it came here in 2006, and all of a sudden, all the message boards and websites lit up with these people just dissing my city, saying, oh, there's nothing in St. Louis. Why would I ever go to St. Louis? And I was really pissed. So I thought, well, I'm just going to show them, and I'm going to turn out the best glass conference they've ever seen, which basically meant tricking out my studio, and I was building these all glass bathrooms. So, glass tiles and glass ceilings and glass sinks. And then I went to buy some faucets to fit with our glass sinks, and I couldn't find any that were cool. So I said, I'll make some faucets. It took me 6 months to make a functional faucet that was all glass. But when I did that, people started coming out of the bathroom saying, can I buy one of these things? And I was like, no, they're too much of a pain in the neck. But one day, some big guy, I remember he was from Texas because I remember his belt buckle. His belt buckle, it looked like he just won a pro wrestling title.
Wheeling, dealing, limousine right, jet flying, son of a gun, and I'm having a hard time holding these alligators down. Woo!
He comes up to me and he's like, son, why don't you just tell me how much I got to pay? And I made up this number that I thought was astronomical. I said $2,000. I'd make one for $2,000. And he hands me his Visa card and he says, blue. And so I have been in the super luxury bathroom fixture business. And that, in fact, was one of the things behind Square, because I was trying to sell one of these silly glass bathroom faucets to a lady in Panama who only had an American Express card, which I don't take at my studio, and lost the sale. And that's what started Square.
So now, how old were you when you couldn't accept American Express? How old were you at this time?
42.
42. So you're 42 years old when you had your epiphany that led to Square.
Yeah.
And do you have a big Texas-sized belt buckle that you wear now?
I should.
Why don't you? That could be your move.
I don't because my wife dresses me,
Okay, that's fair.
and she has impeccable taste. And if you see me looking good,
Yeah.
credit my wife. And if you see me in T-shirts with like burn holes in them and shoes with extra ventilation, that's self-directed fashion. So, yeah, I've subcontracted that part.
Now, how old were you when you and your wife got married?
42. I got married and started Square the same year.
No, you didn't. So you got married while you're building a startup.
Yep.
Tell me about the process of starting Square. How did it start? How did you fund it? Just walk us through this. I think the world is infinitely curious about the formation and the starting of Square.
So Jack Dorsey and I have been friends for years. He used to work for me at another company, which I still ironically own. It's a company called Mira. And Jack and I had kept in touch over the ensuing 15 or 16 years. I was calling him just to catch up and talk about building an electric car because I was starting to try to build electric cars at the time. Jack had started Twitter. And then we agreed to get together that Christmas. And in the ensuing time, they kicked him out of Twitter. So they kicked him out for the first time right between then. And I was like, I felt like somebody had beaten up my little brother. I was really pissed off. And I said to Jack, I said, let's go out and get even with these guys, right? Because I was like, I got a lot of free time. Like I can go out, like I can just move out to San Francisco out of pure spite, right?
Love it.
To get even with the guys that messed with my buddy, right? And Jack, to his credit, said, well, Jim, why don't we do something more positive and start a new company? And I was like, okay, what do you want to do? He's like, I don't know. What do you want to do? I was like, I don't know. So we were kicking around for ideas and had already hired our first programmer because we knew we were going to do something with mobile phones. It was, the iPhone had just come out.
Yep.
And we knew it was going to have something to do with mobile technology. So we'd hired a mobile developer who was starting in 2 weeks. So we had like 2 weeks to figure out what the company was going to do. And we really didn't have any ideas. But then I went home to my studio and had this epiphany where I lost this sale. And I looked down at my iPhone and I said, why does this thing not process credit cards? Like it does everything else, right? The iPhone is this magic device that, turns into a book or a TV or a map or a radio or it just turns into whatever you need it to turn into. And my attitude is, well, why don't we make it turn into a credit card machine? And so that was the beginning of Square.
I think that a lot of our listeners, they listen to this show all the time and they always say, Clay, between you and your partner, you guys have started a men's grooming lounge chain, and your partner started a bank and an optometry clinic. And between Dr. Zeller and I, we've built 16, multi-million-dollar companies. And people always say, how do you do it? And you say, well, you find a problem and you solve it. Imagine you were sitting down right now with a one-on-one coaching session with somebody who's an aspiring entrepreneur, and they're trying to figure out what kind of business to start. What would you say to them?
So let's define the word entrepreneur.
Okay.
You said aspiring entrepreneur, and I use the word entrepreneur very, very specifically.
Okay.
To distinguish entrepreneurship from business. Okay. So business, let's say this young person wants to start a business, i.e. they want to start a coffee shop or a brokerage firm or a car company or like do something that has been done before. They want to start an airline. Okay. An airline's a business. There are airlines that you can copy. Okay. Businesses are really good things to do if you want to make money. My definition of entrepreneurship is an archaic one because the original definition of entrepreneur was somebody who did crazy stuff and stuff that had not been done before. So I'll give you an example of an entrepreneur right now. One of my friends is trying to really cut the cost of launching satellites. So he's bought a bunch of 1970s military surplus fighter jets, like these old MiG-23s, and I don't know what.
Sure.
Holy cow!
Harry Carey wanted to chime in there.
I love Harry Carey. Oh my God.
He wanted to chime in.
My goal is to earn Harry Carey at least once more during this interview.
Okay.
But I mean, this guy, like, so he strips all the radar off these planes so they get really light.
Yeah.
Fuels them up and puts a missile on them, and then he flies them up to 70,000 feet. The service ceiling, puts it into a power drive, like a Mach 2 power drive. So you've got all this kinetic energy. Then he points it back up at the atmosphere and launches the missile. And the cool thing about this is if you do the first 70,000 feet and, are going really fast, now you have a lot of energy. So you don't need a lot of fuel. So your missile or rocket can be light, and it can get the satellite into orbit really cheaply. So now that's an entrepreneur, because that might not work. That sounds nuts, okay?
Yep.
And if you're doing something like that, you could be a failure. So here's the way I use the word entrepreneur. If you are doing something that has never been done before, if you are solving a problem that is unsolved today, you're an entrepreneur, and I will support you and applaud you and pity you. But that is a different process than starting a business. Okay, so I got another friend of mine. He's started a bunch of coffee shops. He's got one of the top coffee shop chains in the Midwest. They're in Hawaii and Japan, and his name is Howard. And Howard started a coffee shop. Now, the thing about Howard is he did something that has already been done, okay?
Yep.
Because coffee shops have been done. Nothing against what you're doing. As a matter of fact, it's way smarter to be somebody like Howard doing something that has a formula and maybe, let's say, a trade show. Like, you have a problem with your little coffee shop, you can go to a convention center where there are 1,000 people who know how to do the thing that you don't know how to do.
Truth.
And you can take a seminar on it, right? So here's my advice to a young person, or to anybody. They don't have to be young. Well, first of all, get over the age thing. You can start a business any age, so forget that.
Holy cow!
If you want to be respected, to be applauded, to have plaques from the city, if you want to be popular on Tinder, be a business person. Start something that people recognize and understand.
Yep.
You're more fundable. You're more approachable. People understand it. If you are frustrated with a problem that humanity has not solved, you may have to become an entrepreneur, and that's a different path, but it is one where the rules are totally different. And this is the reason I wrote the book. So the Innovation Stack is all about my effort to explain this thing that we don't even have a word for. And when I say we don't have a word for, I mean that when you say the word entrepreneur these days, it's synonymous with a business person. So, you start a car dealership, okay? That's a lot of work to start a car dealership. You know what you are? You're called an entrepreneur. But you're not really, in my definition, because car dealerships have existed before. So I wanted to discuss what it's like to do stuff that had not been done before. And that's why I had to sort of dust off this 100-year-old definition of the term entrepreneur.
Have you hung out with Ted Turner?
No.
Ted Turner.
I have never met Ted.
Well, Ted has this quote where he says that, he goes, "My son is now an entrepreneur. That's what you're called when you don't have a job." And that's what Ted says. And I think that your definition is, I think it's painful if you want to be an entrepreneur. I just help people grow businesses. But what you do is that genius level stuff. And in your book, you're attempting to teach these concepts about being an entrepreneur. Could you speak briefly to the emotional pain of being an entrepreneur? Because I think growing a business like a coffee shop is very easy. But can you speak to the emotional pain that you go through if you're trying to change the world?
Yes, I will talk about pain in a second, but I just want to sort of argue with you for just a second.
No, do it. Yeah.
And you said genius level stuff, okay? And that is precisely why I wrote the book, is to dispel that myth. Like what you just said is the thing that everyone believes, which is if you do something world changing, you have to be some crazy genius. You have to have some sort of special set of skills. Well, listen, folks, and I'm telling you this, I ain't got none, okay? I am a really mediocre guy in a lot of things, okay? I'm not even a great glassblower. I'm a pretty good glassblower. There are guys who are great. I'm pretty good. Jack was no financial expert. Like, he's running one of the biggest financial companies in the country right now. You know what his professional credential is? He's a certified massage therapist. Doesn't even have a college degree. Okay, so you got a glassblower and a therapist building one of the most notable financial companies in the country right now.
Massage therapy.
What are we geniuses about?
Massage therapy.
There's no genius there. There's no qualification. There's no expertise. And this is oh my God, this is so good. Clay, this is why I wrote the book, okay? Because I know people who have tremendous potential, who disqualify themselves because they say, I'm not qualified to do entrepreneurship, okay? And what I say to them, which is a little weird, but I say, look, yeah, you're unqualified, but everybody's unqualified to solve a problem that hasn't been solved before. So I'm a pilot. I fly planes, all right? Now, if I want to get in a plane and fly around, I have to go get certified. I got to get tested. The FAA gives me eye exams and medicals, and there's all these things I got to do to be qualified to fly a plane today, okay? That's really smart. You don't get in a plane and just start flying. But what about the Wright brothers? Like, how could they be qualified to fly the first airplane? Well, they couldn't. They just had to figure it out. Don't disqualify yourself because you think entrepreneurship requires some level of qualification, because that's what killing bright people. And when I wrote this book, I have one person in mind. She is so talented. She is so good. And she constantly stops herself from trying things because she says she feels unqualified. And I got to put an end to that. Okay, so now let's talk about emotional pain. Unless you want to,
well, Jim, I want
to have a rebuttal.
No, I don't want to have a rebuttal.
Go ahead, go for it.
No, this is good.
Shut up for a second.
No, I'm going to meet you in St. Louis, and we're going to have a beer, and we'll arm wrestle over this. I think you have a freakish level of tenacity, because when you think about like Henry Ford, who lost it all multiple times. Yes, academically he was not a genius. I agree. Thomas Edison, not a genius, 10,000 failed experiments of the light bulb. You got Walt Disney, lost it all 5 times. I think maybe not your genius, but your gift or whatever that is the ability to endure an insane amount of rejection. I mean, don't you think you have a freakish amount of persistence, much more than the average human?
I may.
I think that's your one superpower.
It might be. So, but I'm really lazy. So I have a trick that supplements my tenacity. So I'll give you a formula, okay, for supplementing your tenacity. Like if you're one of these people that gives up easily,
yep.
Do something where you can't give up. Okay, so remember Young Frankenstein?
Yeah.
Remember the movie, Gene Wilder? And he's got the thing where he says, lock me in the room with the monster, no matter how loudly I scream, don't let me out.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yep. Burn the boats.
Yes. So that's sort of my business plan. Like when I do something, I try to burn the boats. I try to put myself in a situation where me and my team have to survive or we perish. Now, perish in this case is the company dies, like no individuals die. But there have been, like that's great motivation. Like if you're committed to solving a problem,
I agree.
I'm totally committed. Then you don't have to have great tenacity. You just have to have a survival instinct. And a lot of the entrepreneurs that I profile in the book, a lot of these guys who are like world-changing, world-class entrepreneurs, they are not necessarily the most tenacious, but they put themselves in situations where if they weren't tenacious, they would perish. So a great example was Ingvar Kamprad, okay, who, by his own admission, was just forced into inventing in
IKEA.
Inventing IKEA, building IKEA.
And he's a dyslexic too, a dyslexic guy. I think a lot of these people, when you look at the success of people like yourself, the tenacity's there, not having a backup plan is there. But in your book, The Innovation Stack, Building an Unbeatable Business One Crazy Idea at a Time, you share funny stories. You kind of have these humorous stories of Square's early days. Could you maybe share with the listeners? I think without a little bit of humor, these difficult situations can be unbearable. Could you share with the listeners maybe some of these humorous stories from your book?
Sure. And I need to apologize, first to let everybody know that like the book that you are going to get if you buy the Innovation Stack is different than the one I wrote. Okay. Because when I wrote it, it was half graphic novel. So the book, because I thought it would be fun. Like and look, there are some great stories in the book, and they're funny because they should be funny. I mean, you could look at it as like, wow, that's tragic, or it's like, oh wow, that's tragic, and I'm laughing my ass off. So I would prefer to laugh in the face of tragedy because look, failure is what makes us interesting, right? Nobody wants to hear about success. Success is like totally boring, but failure, boy, that's a great story. But when I wrote the book, I would get a story, and I would, here's some story about, like Kamprad or what happened to us at Square, and I would immediately start sketching it. So it was pen and ink. This was a comic book, and then there'd be the businessy parts where I'd have to explain sort of the phenomenon and do some math and stuff like that, and then I'd switch back to comic. And so when I submitted this to Penguin, my publisher, it was this schizophrenic sort of comic book, then business book, then comic book, then business book, and they loved it. They beat out another publishing company. Like there was a little bidding war for it. I thought, oh man, this is great. I've created a new format. Okay.
Yeah.
And then as soon as I signed the contract and now they own the book, they took me to this windowless conference room in Manhattan and said, Jim, we got to talk. You can't do the comics. And I was like, what? Because that's the whole book.
Oh, come on. Can I boo? Can I boo? Is it okay if I boo?
You can. Yeah, you can.
I'm booing. Okay, continue, my friend. I just want to get the boo out there. I feel like we just killed your dream.
God, I was crestfallen. So, but they gave me a really good reason. They said, look, 60% of your book sales are going to be on e-readers and audiobooks. Like, do you want to lose 60% of the market right away? Because your stupid comics are not going to look good on a 4-inch screen, and they're not going to read at all on a e-reader. So forget selling this thing. Forget reaching people. And I was like, oh, okay, you're right. So I went back and I rewrote it and tried to make the stories funny. But if you buy the book, I will give you the comic, because I kept the comic and I sort of broke it off and I make it. Chapter 9 is its own. I have this comic about a banking badass named A.P. Giannini. So there is a comic book that goes with a book. You can't get it from Penguin, but if you buy the book, I give it to you.
Okay.
So,
now, by the way, you're mentioning people today, like the founder of IKEA and A.P. Giannini, the founder of Bank of America, and a lot of these people don't have degrees. I mean, when you think about David Orrick, no degrees. You think about the guys who launched the computing industry, Wozniak and Jobs, no degree. You think about the people who launched the aviation industry, the Wright brothers. It seems to me you've read a lot of these stories. What would you say to somebody out there that says, do you have to have a degree to be successful?
No, you don't. You don't have to have a degree to be an entrepreneur, certainly, because by definition, the degree is going to prepare you to do stuff that humanity already knows how to do. So if you want to be a business person, you want to be an accountant, you want to run, want to be an attorney, you want to be, a software engineer that works at a company, go get qualified. And that qualification is typically a degree. But if you're going to do something that has never been done before, like build the world's first discount airline or build the world's biggest bank, you don't need a degree. No degree will help you. I mean, maybe there'll be some things you learn on the way to that knowledge, but the specific knowledge itself is almost by definition irrelevant, because you're doing something that hasn't been done before. So what instead you need to do, if you choose this path, is just prepare sort of mentally to be in a place where you're facing a lot of uncertainty. So like if you want to get a degree, get an engineering degree. Like engineering education is the best preparation I can imagine for entrepreneurship, because engineers typically spend most of their time on things that don't work. Okay? Like if it works, you don't need an engineer, Like right now I'm sitting in a chair and the chair is supporting my body weight. It's reasonably comfortable. Like I'm not paying any attention to the chair because it's functioning as it should. Now, if the chair was about to collapse or it was hurting me or there was some sort of problem, well then, let's get an engineer and fix that chair or redesign it or do something like that. So I recently gave a big gift to Washington University's engineering school, because I want to open up the doors of engineering to more people in the world, because I think it's a great problem-solving skill, and it's probably good prep for entrepreneurship, but you don't necessarily need that piece of sheepskin.
What? How did you guys go about getting your first 10 customers at Square? Your first 10 ones?
Well, it was easy. I was the first.
Got it.
Because I wanted it. Okay,
Customer number one. There we go.
Number 2 was a flower lady who sold flowers literally in the building. So we were in Jack's apartment building. We started in a little Jack's apartment. And there was a lady in the plaza in front of his apartment in San Francisco that sold flowers. So we went up to her and said, would you like to be able to take credit cards for people who buy your flowers? And she's like, yeah, but I can't get a credit card thing. It was like, no problem, we'll give you one. So we gave her like the first non-founder Square version. And then the third guy was a stunt pilot Andrei Afanasyev. Andrei got the third square, and he loved it because flight instructors are constantly on the move, so he needed a mobile way for his clients to pay him. He's out on the field or in some airplane. I mean, he could literally get paid, flying upside down. And then we continued to just let people who wanted to try it, and then we listened to their feedback.
Would you say that you got a few of your first customers just by going door to door? I mean, just talking to people? I mean, didn't you fear some rejection?
Well, I mean, yeah, there's rejection, but I mean, there are different types of rejection. First of all, I mean, there's the rejection of I don't need this thing, right? So most people don't need to accept credit card payments. It's not, you have to have a little bit of a business to need that thing. So I don't take it personally if somebody says, well, not for me. Now, if they sit there and tell me I'm stupid, that I'm an idiot, I take that a little personally. But that happened too. So I got probably the biggest rejection I got when we started Square was the CEO of this $4 billion payment company, which at this guy I thought was a big deal, right? He takes me out to dinner in New York. He invites me to dinner, downs a martini, okay?
Yeah.
And then, gesturing with an olive on a skewer tells me what an idiot I am.
Oh.
Using the olive to emphasize his points, right? And his points, frankly, were ones I couldn't refute. He was basically saying, you're trying to serve people who don't deserve to accept credit cards. Their credit scores are too low. They're too small to sue if they steal your money. They're unreliable. He said you're going to lose all your money. You're going to lose all your investors' money. He was just ripping into me, and into these martinis, and I had to sit there and take it for 2 hours.
What? 2 hours?
Well, it was dinner. I mean, look, I don't turn down free food.
Oh.
Look, at the point, let me get something. Let me skip something infinitely clear, Clay. Up until very, very recently, you could get my total attention just by buying me a burrito. Okay.
So yeah, how many of you guys were on this team? It's you and Jack Dorsey and
Jack.
Programmers. Is it just three of you?
The initial team was me, Jack, this guy named Tristan O'Tierney.
Okay.
And poor Tristan died a couple years ago.
No.
So he it was a very tragic situation with Tristan, but a dear guy, and he was that was the original day one team, and then on day two, we added another engineer named Sam Wen, and that was the original team.
So five guys,
and a cat.
and a cat. What was your cat's name?
Well, it wasn't my cat. It was Zoe. It was Jack's cat.
What kind of cat?
Little white, long hair stray. She was a feral cat, and she'd grown up on the mean streets of San Francisco, and Jack rescued her.
Was she kind of a heavy set cat, a skinny cat?
Skinny and tough.
Skinny and tough. Okay, so there's five of you and a cat.
Yeah.
And when did you guys sell $1 million of stuff for the first time? How long did it take you to sell $1 million of stuff?
I don't know. I do not. That was not a metric that.
When did you realize that this thing was actually going to work? Did you ever have a moment where you thought,
Yes.
hey, this might work?
Yeah, I was sitting in a cab in New Orleans. The company was about, we'd had our product out for about 6 months.
Yeah.
And I was riding in the back of a cab, and the cabbie was telling me that he could take credit cards. He's like, I could take credit cards. Now, if you remember cabs in the old days, they could never take credit cards, so you always had to have cash. It was really awkward and messy. And this guy was like, I could take your credit card. I could take your credit card. He's like, I got this thing. It's like the Square. And so he starts pitching me my own product.
Sweet.
Right? And he's pitching me. And when you meet somebody for the first time and you forget their name, that there's like this window where you can ask again. It's like, oh, what was your name again? And you go, oh, it was Clay. And, but like if you let that window pass, then you have to sort of bluff and pretend that you still remember them.
That's called church.
Yeah. So
every Sunday.
There was like probably a minute where I could have fessed up and told this guy that, I was one of the guys that invented that. And I let the window close, and I just sit there in the back of the cab listening to this guy pitch me, and he got most of it wrong. Like, he remembered that it was free. He got the free part right.
Yep.
He got the part right that there were no contracts. no penalties, and he got the part right. That we gave your money the next day, which at the time was revolutionary. But like he got the rates wrong. He got all sorts of other stuff wrong. Like but he was pitching me my product without me having expressed any interest in it. Like this was just like I'm just a stranger in the back of a cab. But he was so excited because this was changing his life, you know.
So,
and the cabbies. I mean, I don't know if you know how the credit card world works in cabs, but the credit card. The cabbie doesn't get most of the money for the credit card.
Yeah.
The company that owns the medallions sets up this really sort of creepy system with their so they own the credit cards and they skim like 10% off the cabbie's take. So that's you want to know why all those credit card machines were broken in the back of the cab? It's not, that thing's not broken. The cabbie breaks it because he doesn't want to have a credit card sale because he's losing money. So yeah, that was the day that was the moment I was like, wow, I might not have to accept every free meal that's offered to me for the rest of time.
Holy cow!
Oh, you got 2 holy cows you've earned so far. So now talk about the actual physical Square device. Did you make that yourself? Did you glass blow the prototype? Who made that?
I made it with some help. My wife was in the studio with me. I had her working a Bridgeport milling machine. We built them all by hand at the beginning. I tried to make one out of glass just to see if I could, and it was a disaster. I made some out of wood. The very first one I made out of metal. I made it out of aluminum because we had a demo with Steve Jobs, and I thought Steve liked aluminum. So the very first Square Reader was milled out of aluminum. That turned out to be a disaster.
What was Steve like when you're pitching aluminum to Steve? What's Steve's personality type like? I think a lot of listeners would be fascinated to know what it's like to pitch something to Steve Jobs.
I wish I had that story.
Okay.
Steve was very sick at the time, and so we had the demo scheduled, and everything was set. And then Steve fell ill. I mean, he had he was fighting for his life, and so we canceled. So never got to meet him. We never ended up demoing for Steve. We prepared, we had everything ready to go. We had it scheduled, and then he canceled.
You've met some people that I've studied, read about. It's unbelievable. I mean, Peter Thiel, one of the first key investors for Facebook, he endorses your book, and he actually says, "Who can say they went up against Amazon and won? Jim McKelvey can." Peter Thiel, what's it like to be around Peter Thiel?
Peter Thiel is a complete badass. I have tremendous respect for Peter. And he funded my current company. And he was the only guy I wanted to fund my company. And the reason I wanted Peter, so I'm doing something called Invisibly right now, which is I'm trying to essentially give every person in the United States control of their online identity. So you know what's in those secret files that represent us, and then allow people to exercise control over the ads that they see and how their attention is bought and sold, all in an effort to save journalism. So it's complicated. I don't want to give a pitch on this, but I will tell you this: Invisibly, if you go to invisibly.com, you will probably be confused about what we're doing, but the reason it's called Invisibly is you don't need to understand it. Like, it works without you understanding, but we'd be happy to explain it to you if you wanted to, because it's
how about this?
It's really good.
Because I grew up really poor, and I'm a shameless sales guy. You built your wealth. Can we do kind of a pitch for Invisibly? Just a little pitch. I mean, we kind of want to be sold something today. In addition to your new book, The Innovation Stack, can you give us just a little brief pitch?
So the pitch with Invisibly is that you as a consumer have 2 big problems. The first is you don't have any control over how your eyeballs are bought and sold. And if you think the stuff that is free is really free, it ain't free. You are paying for it with your attention. That's what advertisements are. Okay, you kind of understand this when you're watching TV and you see an ad. But when you're online and when you see an ad, it is the same thing. You are paying for that content. You're not paying very much. And unfortunately, you're paying in a way that doesn't reward quality. And what I mean by this is that if I trick you into watching something for 20 seconds, I make the same amount of money as if I create 20 seconds that you love. Now, in a normal economy, if I give you a product that's crap, you shouldn't pay for it. You'd say, I don't want this. And if I give you a product that's great, you'd want to pay more for it. People actually want to pay more for good stuff because that's what gives us good stuff. Okay? So But that economy doesn't work online because you're monetized by the amount of time, not by the quality. So we figured out a way to fix this, and it involves something called micropayments, which are these tiny, tiny little payments. So when you, in an invisibly experience, see an ad, the advertiser is literally paying you. So if I see an ad for Tide Pods, Procter & Gamble is giving me 3 cents. Now that 3 cents, I mean, who cares about 3 cents? Well, the answer is it goes immediately into a little invisible wallet. And then 3 cents, it turns out, is a lot of money when you're browsing content, because the typical newspaper article or little video, costs less than a penny. So with 3 cents in your pocket, you could probably view 10 things without having to see another ad. And if you make this system efficient, 2 things happen. One, the individual gets control over their eyeballs, because, look, if I'm selling you my eyeballs for money, then we can have a conversation about that. So you can sit there and say, well, Jim, what do you want to buy? And the answer is, well, I'm currently toilet training my 2-year-old, right? And so don't show me ads for diapers anymore. Like, I don't want diapers. Like, I probably want, disinfectant, mops, and,
and burrito ads.
Maybe some stronger detergent, right? There's things that I actually want.
Yeah.
And so invisibly essentially makes the market for your attention something that you control, and because you control it, it becomes efficient. And becomes efficient, then you have to see way fewer stupid ads.
Jim, we're going to go into lightning round because I want to respect your time here today. So here we go, lightning round. Yeah. We have 5 rapid-fire questions for you.
Okay.
First off, the working at the Fed, the Federal Reserve. What are you doing with the Fed?
So I'm a deputy director of the St. Louis Federal Reserve. So, for instance, tomorrow we have a Fed meeting. We set interest rates, and we do things to maintain maximum employment and stable prices in the United States. And it's a wonderful system. So I've been there for 3 years. And the great thing about the Fed, like, Americans need to know how great our central bank is. And I know it takes a lot of crap from the politicians, but here's the deal. It's independent. Okay? It is not political. It's not a Republican Fed. It's not a Democratic Fed. You are politically neutral when you are on the Fed. And because you're politically neutral, what you do is you make decisions based on the best information you have for the good of the American people. And that's what we do. And and people whine about it and complain and say, quantitative easing, why'd you do that? But the fact is, these are really, really smart people who don't have to play politics. And so it is one of the greatest institutions that I've ever been associated with. And I love it.
Now, we have 2 listeners here who they own a machine shop. They make parts that are purchased by Tesla and the U.S. Army. And one of they're 2 brothers. And Nace Roberts here is in the studio. And Nace has a question for you. So, Nace, meet Jim.
Hey, Jim, how you doing? Hey, actually, we're not just a fan of the Square, but me and my brother are actually users of the Square.
Ooh.
And we've been using it for about 10 years now. And we use it on our website daily. And we actually use it at trade shows. So that little box that you created with no strings attached, literally, has changed the way we sell our products. So we just want to say thank you. Hey, I've heard you talk about how the market demand is a driving force of innovation, and how great entrepreneurs and innovators recognize a need in the market to react by creating a company that our customers can embrace. So I have 2 questions with that side note. Is that okay with you?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. If you have a new business, how do you vet the new business idea in a market to know if it's something consumers will embrace before fully jumping in?
Okay. So I'm going to go back to that sort of riff that I gave you at the beginning, which is, if it's a business, if you're a business person, then you can study the market. There are, and as a matter of fact, you know who's really good at this? Bankers. So if you want a free business consult, don't hire a consultant. Go to a bank and try to get a loan. And what the banker will do is he will look up your business on a statistical chart. And he'll say, oh, well, the chances of us getting our money back are this. And they can literally be free consulting. So that's for a business. That's if you're a business person, okay? If you're an entrepreneur, if you're building something that has not been built before, if you're solving a problem that is unsolved, you don't get any of that. You have to guess and go, right? So when we started Square, which I believe was an entrepreneurial company, because we were serving little merchants that we didn't know if any of them existed. Like when we started Square, we knew we had one customer, and that was me. Like we literally didn't know if anybody else would ever want this thing because we couldn't. And this is the thing that people always make this mistake. They sit there and say, well, I want this guarantee. I want this guarantee that all my work is going to be fruitful. And I say, okay, if you want a guarantee, go into business. And you don't even get a full guarantee there, but it's pretty close.
Yeah.
You can pretty much assure that if you do the things that the other businesses who are like yours are doing, then you will be successful to the extent that they are successful. And the example I use in the book is restaurants in New York. So I interview Randy Garutti, who's the CEO of Shake Shack, and Randy tells me flat out, he's like, Jim, we didn't invent the hamburger. Like we just have to make our hamburgers a little bit better and a little bit tastier and a little bit faster. And like he's got this team that's super dedicated to making the hamburger just a little bit better, and he's kicking ass. But hey man, there are other hamburgers in Manhattan. So if you want a guarantee, go into business. If you want to do something that hasn't been done before, you're going to have to be an entrepreneur, and that is a different journey.
Okay, thank you for that advice. Okay,
Cool.
So what advice, for the second question, what advice would you suggest to an existing company to leverage consumer demand more aggressively?
I don't even know what that means.
Oh,
Leverage
wow.
consumer demand more aggressively.
You're trying to trick Are you trying to
What
trick
the-
our guests? What's he
What
doing?
the heck?
Unbelievable.
What the heck does
Holy cow!
Where's Ozzie Smith to translate? Okay.
How the hell? What does leveraging demand mean?
So I was just
What?
asking for a question of for
No
people.
genius here.
Okay, me either. That's why I was asking it.
Jesus.
So I was asking for just a company that's breaking even monthly.
Yeah.
How do they get people to find them more, or to get consumers to want to demand their products or services more?
Oh man, so that's business. That's the game I don't play.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I'm just not qualified to answer the question. I mean, like you need a good manager. You need somebody who comes in and studies it and makes incremental improvements. I mean, look, these are all just platitudes. I'm not saying anything that's even worthy of writing down or remembering. Because look, do things a little bit better. Be a little bit more efficient. Work harder, not smarter. Or reverse that. But do that. That's all a bunch of crap to me because I can't do that. I'm not a manager. Okay, I'm not a guy who takes a business and tweaks it 10%. I can't do that. I have to work with people who are really good at that because it's just my thing. What I've basically spent my whole life doing is trying stuff that nobody's ever tried and failing a lot. But then occasionally when it works, I end up with like one of the coolest glass blowing studios in the world, or well, actually, you're a machine shop. Okay, so I've got a makerspace in St. Louis. We've got we got water jets and embroidery machines, and like all these people come together and make stuff. And you know what? That model didn't exist. Well, kind of existed in some place called Tech Shop, but then they went bankrupt last year. So so I build stuff that I don't know if it's going to work. But when it does work, the cool thing is, I'll try to sell entrepreneurship a little bit here because I've been dissing it the whole time.
Yeah.
If you are successful as an entrepreneur, you have basically no competition. You end up with the market to yourself. You end up with this crazy system that cannot be easily attacked. And the reason I know this is because when Square was 4 years old, Amazon copied our product, undercut our price, added live customer support, which we didn't have, and everyone thought Square was dead. And a year later, Amazon quit. They couldn't take our market from us. And now this is Amazon. This is the most deadly competitor in the planet.
True.
Like,
Yep.
Amazon scares Walmart. Amazon scares everybody. Like Amazon scares the government.
Amazon scares Amazon.
Yes, I mean they're but the reason we beat them is not because we're like great managers or anything like that. It's that we had this thing called an innovation stack, and we were entrepreneurs. And look, if you read the book, you'll learn that there's this different set of math, and it's like it's like a Laplace transform, right? Like if you're trying to solve a differential equation, this is a terrible analogy. I'm just gonna lose your whole audience here. I gotta go with it. All right. So in math, okay, there are these hard-ass problems that called differential equations, and they're really, really tough to solve. But then there's this little trick you can play where you translate the equation into a different space, and then you can just use basic algebra. And it's so powerful. So you take your problem, which you can't figure out, and you map it into this new space, solve it using basic algebra, and then you map it back, and it solves a problem. And like that's what you want to do. You want to have this other vocabulary. So I'm trying to give like the world a Laplace transform, but I promise there's no math in the book.
Jim, I will say this. We have time for one more question here for you.
Yeah.
Now, because you've done so well as an entrepreneur, you have the money needed to buy burritos. And what's exciting is I empower you to go out and get yourself a big belt buckle. You got to do it and then put get like an Ozzie Smith, like some type of Ozzie Smith tribute on it. Think about that.
That's a great idea. Although I would probably make my own belt buckle because I'm a maker at heart. I'm a guy who.
And you can just wear it when your wife's not around. You know what I mean? We won't tell.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
I will see you in public.
All right.
Giant belt buckle.
Oh, yes. Now, Jordan, Jordan is Nace's brother, and he's going to one-up him with our final question here. So, Jordan,
Okay.
one-up your brother with the best question of all time for Jim McKelvey.
Okay. Hey, Jim. So,
Hey, Jordan.
as a fellow maker, and believe it or not, I have 2 Bridgeports back at the shop.
Oh,
Yeah.
awesome. Have you ever left the wrench on the top?
That's a big no-no.
I know. Have you done it?
I will say probably in my younger days because that is where I learned how to machine. So
That will kill you on a mill. Okay.
yeah.
Just checking. Okay, there you go.
So I heard a quote from you, and it was when you guys were about to do the Steve Jobs demo, and you were making that first part out of aluminum, and you said sometimes you have to go with what's good, and then be fast to correct the mistakes. Can you speak to some of the other makers out here about a product they have and they're waiting to pull the trigger because it's not perfect yet?
Yeah, you got to ship. You got to ship. We made so my big problem with the aluminum square reader was that aluminum is electrically conductive, and so effectively it wasn't a card reader; it was a cardiac reader. It would pick up your heartbeat if you touched it and screw up all the electronics. So we, I discovered that like too late. I built the thing, tested it out, and handed it to Jack right before a demo. Actually, he had to go demo it to Mike Bloomberg, and the thing didn't work because it was electrically conductive. So here's the thing. These days, you have so much power as a maker because you have 3D printing, you have CNC machines, you've got all these wonderful tools to make stuff quickly. Mm-hmm. I really believe that you should, if you can, make it yourself, because that gives you the power to, first of all, understand what's going on, to make the little tweaks that need to be made, and you get to move really, really fast. So, all of a sudden we discover that an aluminum reader is a stupid idea, okay? And I've got a plastic one ready the next day. I mean, literally, it was just a question of me, getting some plastic and switching. But like imagine if I'd had a supply chain that went all the way through Shenzhen.
Yep.
I mean, God help you if your supply chain goes through China right now. I mean, China's shut down. Like you want to get that product out, man. Like the fact that you've got a couple of Bridgeports and some knowledge, like your company just surpassed everybody else because they're shut down and you're not. Why? Because you control it. And, so many people feel like they've got to find an expert to build something. And look, I mean, maybe you do if it's super complicated, but I mean, it wasn't like I knew how to build a credit card reader when I built a credit card reader.
True.
But you can look stuff up. I mean, Made magazine, first issue, had an article teaching how to build a credit card reader into a cell phone. There was literally an article that taught me how to do all the stuff I needed to do to make Square. I mean, like you could just look it up. So if you can make it, and the more you make, the better you get at that.
Jim, not that you need to have Kanye West on your team, but Kanye West said almost the exact same advice in an interview with Forbes, talking about the importance of being able to make your own prototypes.
The idea comes to you, you sketch it out,
And then what?
We have a
Parts to it?
team of incredible designers. We'll take the entire design team to Japan. We'll take the entire design team to Zone and talk about, you know, where we'd like to take these ideas. And I mean, it's a painting. It's a spirit that's inside of it that's now translated into these miniature vehicles. I'm just soaking in all the shoes. Like, look at all these, look at these designs, look at these ideas all together. The protos, the versions that you've seen in actuality and the versions that never quite made it. To be able to see inside of this, there's, you know, this is an infinite amount of words in front of you. There's so many prototypes that go into what you eventually get.
How many prototypes do you think per shoe you'll cycle through before you get to the one that you actually
It's
want?
hundreds. We work on, like I said, miniature vehicles. We work on shoes like someone would work on a car.
Your book is just filled with wisdom, and if you're out there today and you're thinking about buying a regrettable burrito, you know, that bonus burrito that you don't need, I encourage you to fast for one day to save up the money needed to buy the Innovation Stack, Building an Unbeatable Business One Crazy Idea at a Time. Again, it's the Innovation Stack, Building an Unbeatable Business One Crazy Idea at a Time. Jim, thank you so much for joining us today.
Clay, Jordan, Mace, this is super cool, guys, and thank you so much for your time today. This was fun.
Oh, Thrive Nation, that was a mind-expanding look inside the mind of a true American success story. So if you learned something today, share this show with somebody. I'm telling you, just send them a text, send them an email, maybe send them a fax.
Surely you can't be serious. I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Send them why don't we all just send our friends and family a fax today? If you still have a fax machine, fax them a link to today's show. Let's share this show. Let's share the show via a smoke signal. Let's go out of our way to just get this show out here, out into the vast interwebs. And now, without any further ado, let's end this show with a boom. So here we go. 3, 2, 1, boom. Stop what you're doing and think about this for a second. What would happen if your company was suddenly able to generate exponentially more quality sales leads? That would be incredible. What would happen if your company came up at the top or near the top of the Google search engine results? Well, I would just feel overwhelmed with all that business. How many thousands of dollars in lost sales or millions of dollars in lost sales are you missing out on simply because your potential customers can't find you when they go online to search for the products and services that you offer? I refuse to think that thought because I don't want any more business. Unless you are a dirty communist that hates money, my new book, Search Engine Domination, will help you grow your business. In my new book, Search Engine Domination, we will teach you the specific steps that you need to take to dominate the search engine results. What do you mean by dominate? You see, in my new book, Search Engine Domination, we will teach you the specific steps that you need to take to dominate search engine results. Download your free ebook copy today at thebestseobook.com. I repeat, that's thebestseobook.com.
My name is Amy Baltimore, and I am a CPA in Covington, Tennessee. I've been working with the Thrive team now for about a year. One of the first things that they did was to update my website and my search engine optimization. I prior had a website, but I was not being found on Google, and all of my new business was coming through referrals from friends, family, etc. And right away, I started to see results. People were calling and coming in saying that they found me on Google. They just Googled CPA near me, and there I was at the top of the page. And so It's been a great help to my business.
Again, you can download your free ebook copy today at thebestseobook.com.
Hey, this is Dustin Huff. I'm with Keystone Harbor Marina. We joined Thrive back in January and have been working with these guys for about 7 months. During that time period, we have moved up our Google rank through reviews and SEO processes that we've compiled through these guys. Our leads have gone from about 4 a week to now 165 a week. So the process works. I will tell you from experience, once you begin, you have to stay with it. As long as you continually do this week in and week out, month in and month out, you'll continually grow.
The system works, but nothing works unless you do. You've got to take some action. Download the ebook for free today at thebestseobook.com.
Hello, my name is Daniel with Daniel's Heating and Air here in Amarillo, Texas. The way Google has affected my business, we have got a lot of calls from Google. Right now it's July and we've had the best month ever. And it took us about 8 to 10 months to get on top of Google, and I'm glad we did.
Remember, nothing works unless you do. You have to go to thebestseobook.com today. Download the ebook for free. Just download that ebook for free, and you'll be off to the races.
Hi, my name is Christina Nemes. I'm the owner and operator of Angel's Touch Auto Body and Detailing in Bourne, Massachusetts. We have been working with Thrive and their coaching for, say, 8 to 9 months, and it took us about 6 months, 5 to 6 months to get on the top of Google, and with their help with the website and marketing, and the SEO and retargeting ads with Google, and it has been phenomenal. We just have light and day business coming in, phone calls coming in, walk-ins, referrals. It's just through the roof, and we couldn't be happier. At the moment, we are up 50% this year from the previous year, and not only is that part of our own hard work and diligence, but also with the help of Thrive and what they've done for us and getting us on the top of Google and, you know, all their knowledge and coaching. And yeah, so super grateful, super pumped to see what the future holds for all of us. Thank you.
This is your year to thrive. Success you will find. Today is your day, and now is your time.
Lazy hands make for poverty, but diligent hands bring wealth. Proverbs 10:4. I'm here to tell you, you can do it if you can just motivate yourself. 12 the masses had to cut off a few, so on the daily you and I could rendezvous. A misshapen tree that I had to prune. I had to make cuts to be here daily at noon. So like a tidal wave of knowledge monsoon, I could rain on the parades of those who doubt in you. Are you the next Rockefeller or the next guru, or the next Dr. King who's changing the rules? Walls are in your way, will you run right through? Like a running back, force the one, it's up to you. I remember my days back in the dorm room, tuned to the gloom like the temple of doom, overwhelmed with the doubts that try to consume my hope for the future that I could pursue. But from the mountaintop now I can conclude that you have what it takes if you want the view to.
This is your year to thrive. Success you will find. Today is your day, and now is your time. It's your year to thrive. Success you will find. Today is your day, and now is your time.
This moment is profound cause you're above the ground. Your road might have been rough, but what you got now is now. We're here to pick you up and to even show you how, but you gotta be resourceful with that old plow. Started from the bottom, but I worked my way up, cause by 4 a.m. I always been prayed up. Rise and grind, now's your time, don't dare let up. You gotta get it, don't quit it till your seeds grow up.
This is your year to thrive.
Come on.
Success you will find.
Yes.
Today is your day,
Somebody say,
and now is your time.
it's your time.
It's your year to thrive.
Come on.
Success you will find. Today is your day, and now is your time.
It's your time. We all have a wish and we all want to win, but we cannot begin without self-discipline. If you fall on your face, get yourself up again. Attach yourself to goals, not fail with the friends. When the storms get rough and the and scatter and leave. You only be there with yourself and what you believe. We believe in you, but not as much as God does. If you're going through hell, he's got nothing but love. Apply what you learn, increase what you earn, and in due time you have money to burn.
Apply what you learn, increase what you burn, and in due time you got money to burn.
Sing it.
Apply what you learn, increase what you burn, in due time you got money to burn.
Sing it.
Apply what you learn,
Sing it.
increase what you burn.
Yes.
In due time you got money to
With this biblical miracle, I look to shout down the doubters. Kill the weeds that be killing your dream flowers. Empower you to devour all the obstacles that make your sweet dreams sour. As for me, I used to stutter, but now I'm on the microphone smooth like butter. If I can do it, I know you can too, but you must stick to it like postage do. And while Merton's on the chorus, singing what he sings, I encourage you to dream big dreams.
Today is your day.
Today's your day.
And now is your time.
It's your time.
This is your year to thrive.
Sing it, sing it.
Success you will find. Today is your day.
It's your day.
And now is your time.
It's your time.
Today is your day.
Come on.
And now is your time.
Sing it, Martin.
Today is your day. Now is your time.
I realize I can't sing like that, but I can talk and play the woodblock. Okay. If you guys need me, I'll just be over here.